does this? This is so insanely weird. Businesses rarely, if ever, in fact, I can't think of a time when I have ever seen this before, post birthday wishes to their founder or their CEO or their owner or anybody for that matter, because it's just weird. That's a weird thing to do, especially because a business is not supposed to be about that person. In this case, the founder, Meghan, okay? Meghan, the founder. Her business, as ever, isn't supposed to be about her. Any business is supposed to be about the consumer or the client. That's who the business is supposed to be about. Therefore, using a platform, be it social account or website, to post personal messages of any kind, including a birthday message, is unprofessional and inappropriate. It just is. Like, take, for example, Kim Kardashian. She is a co-founder of Skims, usually credited as the founder, but I believe she founded it with like 2 or 3 other people. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Skims is a shapewear company, and she's the face of it, and she's one of the founders, and probably owns a significant amount of it. But Skims, the company, its social media accounts and whatnot, has never used its platforms to wish Kim a happy birthday. Never, not once has that happened. Actually, quite the opposite has happened. Kim Kardashian used her personal Instagram account to celebrate Skims' 1-year anniversary, kind of Skims' 1-year birthday in a way. And this makes so much sense because Kim, using her personal account to be like, hey, this business that I have been working on or helped create has been active for a whole year. It's our 1-year anniversary with this business. How cool. That's a big thing for me today. That's what she was doing with her personal social media account, posting that. And anybody who's following her personal social media account then gets a little bit of exposure to Skims. And if they didn't know about it already, maybe they now would be curious about it or, get a little bit of free advertising in a way for Skims. The other way around would be insane for Skims to be like, oh, it's Kim's birthday today. Who cares? You're trying to buy shapewear. So in this context, as ever, the brand, who cares if it's Meghan's birthday? As a brand, it doesn't matter to the image of the brand. The brand should be focused on the customers, should be focused on the next drops, should be focused on sharing recipes and ideas and inspiration and hyping people up for the next time there's something available. They should be focused on that. This is really bizarre. And make no mistake, Meghan did write this message and post it on As Ever for herself. It was she who composed the message and posted it, no one else. How embarrassing. Let's see what she said to herself. Celebrating the woman behind it all. She pours her heart, vision, and magic touch into every detail, and today we raise a glass to her. Happy birthday to our founder. Ugh. Okay. By magic touch, we mean the exact opposite, right? Because she literally ruins everything, all potential, all the time. We even have a video about her year in review so far coming up, so be sure to subscribe so you do not miss it. Lots of fails, lots of things went sour. But celebrating the woman behind it all. Is she though? Because remember, her products are for sale all over the place under different labels. She's buying things that are already being made and she's putting her label on it, with the exception of the loose jam sauce called spread. She surely had them formulate it extra runny. But everything else, none of it's custom. All of it's just bought and repackaged, basically. So how is she behind all of it? She's not. She's behind the social media, the marketing, yes, because she's putting herself in all the pictures. But she's not behind all of it. And also, it's more than just Meghan. Netflix is doing a lot of the legwork here. So it's not just one woman behind this brand. There's a lot of people working on it, allegedly. And just how cringe to raise a glass to yourself on Instagram. Super strange, super weird. You know what this reminds me of? Last year, Harold got the bright idea to email People magazine on the eve of his birthday his thoughts. It was looked like a diary entry on how he was feeling about his birthday that year. It was weird. And he emailed People magazine himself. And so they put out an article that said, Harry told us this. This is what Harry said to us. And somebody, either Harry or Meghan or both of them, or maybe one of their staff, who knows, reached out to People magazine and had them change it. And they had the article corrected to say that it was a source close to Harry. Because when they said Harry wrote blah, 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 that exposed the fact that he emailed them himself, which it is weird. That means People magazine didn't reach out to him and be like, hey, can we have some comments from you? Or we have some questions for you about your birthday? Because why would they? So the whole thing was cringy and embarrassing. And it didn't even make it into a print edition. It was just an online article. It doesn't matter. It was embarrassing. And it was self-important. And that's what this reminds me of. Meghan making a post to herself on Instagram feels the same way. Self-important and embarrassing. So the media keeps saying that this is a new picture of Meghan released for her birthday. Just like the royals do, they release a new picture for everybody's birthday. But this is not new. This is not a new photograph. This is from her photo shoot that she did ages ago for the paid-for People magazine interview that was trying to promote With Love Meghan before it was released, which came out earlier this year. So this photo, while it wasn't released at the same time as the magazine interview, it was from that photo shoot, as you can see. So calling it new is a little misleading. But that's not the only embarrassing moment that Meghan created for herself this week. Take a look at the announcements for her wine here, because I find this to look so incredibly amateur and sloppy. It just doesn't have the polish that this attempt demands, because she is attempting with As Ever to give a sort of fancy aesthetic to her brand. She is. You wouldn't have penmanship like this or just this sort of a font, even if it was printed and graphic design. You wouldn't use this sort of a font if you didn't want it to have a little bit of a fancy feel, obviously. But her stubborn use of her own handwriting is ruining the effort. Here you can see the cursive is very poorly spaced, both in each line, letter to letter, and in between words. We have a very poorly spaced format here, vertically as well. We also have an uneven slant. And these little problems, they are little problems, but they immediately disrupt the sort of elegant, luxurious, fancy aesthetic that she's clearly going for. Because this scribbly cursive is meant to give a certain vibe, and it just gets ruined by her execution. It's lacking. But using unprofessional or simply poorly executed handwriting here is making the whole thing, the whole aesthetic of As Ever, the whole presentation of it, and specific pictures like this individually, it's making all of it look novice and like a school craft project, quite frankly, and ultimately incompetent. So, for example, here we have an aggressive slant to the E, a lot of crowding of certain letters, but then some of them not, a little bit more spaced out. Each one has an uneven base and height to it, so it's just looking a little bit wonky. And some of these little mistakes, are kind of nitpicky. And of course we could forgive it or not take it too seriously. But the thing is when you're trying to make it look like this elevated, elegant thing, then these sorts of things can't be happening here. You can't have those types of mistakes because they'll diminish the attempt at selling this sort of elegant and elevated vibe. We have Sunshine written with a capital, just like Summer Essentials is written with a capital, but then Good Friends is both lowercase. That makes no sense. And then the amount of space below Good Friends is so massive. Look at how much space there is there compared to everywhere else. It makes the As Ever rosé look like an afterthought. Your eye is directed to the blank space on the page rather than the As Ever rosé. Between the writing and the grapes, the most important part of the note should be As Ever rosé, but it's crowded and obscured. And why are there 3 check marks? That also makes it look kind of silly and ridiculous. If anything, the As Ever rosé should have been in the middle or at the top of the list, because that's what she's trying to push in this advertisement, that's your summer essential. You need sunshine, good friends, and As Ever rosé. Why does it then look like it was written at the bottom of the page as an afterthought, far, far, far away from everything else? Your eye just doesn't land on it. You don't see it. You don't care about it. It's a big mistake. It's not a good composition for an advertisement. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this to not be blurry, but I'm zooming in on the handwriting, and so it's coming out blurry no matter what I do. So I apologize for that. If I could make it more clear, I would. She maybe should have thought of that and produced a more clear and high quality image that then we could see better. In the advertising delight no one asked for, we also have feet pics. Okay? More pictures of Meghan's feet. What is happening? Why? The last person anyone wants to see feet pictures of is using her feet to advertise wine, bake mixes, tea, honey, gloppy, runny, loose jam called spread, but it's actually a sauce or a big mistake. I am so confused. Why feet? Why are we going this direction, and why her feet? I need answers. This is it. This doesn't add up. I have had beef with Meghan's feet before, but not her feet themselves, but rather the shoes. Meghan wears 2 big shoes. She wears shoes at least a full size bigger than she needs to, and it makes her unable to walk gracefully in her high heels. It makes it look like she has a total lack of control over her body, her step size, her stability, well, rather instability, and she looks insane. She looks silly. She looks like she's playing dress up because she's wearing huge shoes that she cannot walk in properly. It looks incredibly amateur and foolish. It's embarrassing. But that's the extent that I have beef with her feet. But this, putting feet into advertising for food pantry products, is beyond me. I do not understand this at all. Advertising needs to connect with the products as a basic requirement. When you see the advertisement, it needs to make sense what product it goes with. It needs to match. How on earth does Meghan's feet connect with food products or anyone's feet? How does it? What am I missing? Someone solve the riddle for me, because I just can't. I can't deal with it. Also, just from an aesthetics perspective, her feet here on the stool and then also here dangling from this ledge, disembodied in both circumstances. It's kind of strange in and of itself, but it's actually, as many have noted, kind of disturbing imagery. This type of imagery is often associated with something terrible. So in general, that's plenty enough excuse to reevaluate your ad concept. But I mean, just baseline here. Feet in general does not connect to foodstuffs in any way, shape, or form unless you're going down a different type of rabbit hole, okay? Meghan, as the founder, leading the ad campaigns evidently, but anybody in a business situation or just in general needs to have self-awareness, like as a basic requirement to function properly and get success. To be successful, you need a good amount of self-awareness. And in this case, that self-awareness should be applied to knowing whether or not your feet are modeling material. Just be honest with yourself. Not everybody can be a foot model. Not everybody can be a hand model. Not everybody's tall enough to be a model. What makes Meghan think that she can be a foot model? If your feet aren't particularly dainty or cute, they're not a vibe in this sort of arena. No shaming, we're just talking advertising here. It's meant to look appealing when you're making an advertisement, especially for something like foodstuffs and wine. It should be appealing. It should make you feel inspired to want to try the products. This does none of the above. I don't think anybody is seeing these pictures and thinks, oh, gee, you know what I would like to do is put some of this loose spread in my mouth. Gross. But the embarrassment and making a fool of herself continues on. In yet another business mistake, Meghan initially told us that she was going to have sparkling wine coming up next. The next thing she was going to have available on her site was going to be sparkling wine. Coming soon, shortly after she took the rosé off sale. But what did we have drop instead just the other day? More rosé, not sparkling, still rosé. What is happening here? I cannot understand her thought process of being just willy-nilly throwing out announcements and teasers that turn out to be lies. How is any business going to survive if you're constantly confusing your consumer base, as small as it may be, but consequently she's sending a message of complete incompetence and ineptitude? Is she unable to keep a schedule and properly organize her social posts and promotional content? Apparently, she can't keep it straight. Perhaps she's drinking too much of her icky wine and cannot remember or no longer cares what's coming up next, whether it be sparkling wine or rosé. She doesn't care because she's on the rosé. So what does it matter what she posts to social media? It's not a good look. It's not working out well for her, and it looks like she doesn't know what she's doing. Also, I did take a look and monitor the website for the rosé that she dropped unexpectedly. It's still for sale. It hasn't sold out. It's not selling as fast. Of course, she could have had more available. Sure, of course. Stocking appropriately is a goal for Meghan. To try to stock enough to not sell out immediately. But I think we all know what's really going on here. Meghan doesn't have enough people interested in buying her stuff. And so it's not going to sell out. As I've said, those first few things that she put out for sale, the initial items she released, were bought up in large part by people who were morbidly curious or who have a job that involves reviewing the products one way or the other. So many magazines and outlets reviewed things initially from the first drop, and there's a few scragglers when there was a second drop. Since then, there's been no reviews and things are not selling. So a massive percentage of her sales were indeed from that initial buzz of getting an article or a review out. And now there's nothing left to do. Then they're not going to do that multiple times. And so all subsequent items that she makes for sale on her website are not going to sell at the same rate as those initial items. And this happens a lot of the times if you have a company or a product coming on for sale that's hyped a lot and there's a lot of curiosity about it, or somebody who is particularly polarizing. Because then there's a lot of interest in, is it going to flop? Is it going to work? Is there any substance behind this person? Or is this just what everybody thinks it's going to be? And that is a big mess. Finally, some people have noticed a little bit of a problem with Meghan referencing her wine as vintage every time it's mentioned in a post or on the website. And I'm not an expert, so I'm going to ask for anybody who is an expert and knows to clarify in the comments for us. But the comments I've been seeing circulating and the questions I've seen going around are in reference to the fact that with wine, generally speaking, the term vintage, when alongside a year, simply refers to the year that the grapes were harvested. So you could have a 2024 vintage rosé, technically, yes, you could, because its year, 2024 in this case, is listed as the wine's vintage, meaning when the grapes were harvested. However, to truly be considered a vintage wine itself and the wine be vintage, it should have aged for a significant amount of time. Like 20 years apparently is a loose industry standard to be able to really categorize a wine as a true vintage, which is why I said a 2023 vintage doesn't really impress me, and a 2024 even less so. Not that wine has to age to be good, but it's not exactly impressive the way Meghan was talking about it. And so this is one of many examples from Meghan's website and her Instagram posts of what people are talking about she's doing wrong or saying wrong. Our 2024 Napa Valley Rosé evokes the same effortlessly elegant notes of our debut vintage, delicately balanced with soft notes of stone fruit, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this debut vintage phrase right here is what people are beefing with, because it was not technically a vintage wine. That wine was not a vintage wine. In this context, she's using vintage as a noun to describe that wine as a vintage wine, and therefore she's implying that the wine itself was vintage and should have been aged significantly when it wasn't, so it's misleading. The way she should have said it, according to these commentators, is a debut 2023 vintage, or just saying elegant notes of our 2023 vintage, delicately balanced, blah, blah, blah. That would be the correct way to write it, not just calling it a vintage, because that's calling it a vintage wine, which it was not. But anybody who's an expert, please leave it in the comments so that we can all figure out what exactly is going on with that. But thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a happy day ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye!